Hi everybody, Colin from the Bike Dads, and today we're talking about a controversial subject, e-bikes for kids. Specifically, we're talking about this platform right here. It's the Woom Up, a very unique e-bike for kids, as not only is it one of the first, it's one of the lightest production e-mountain bikes for kids to date. So let's address two things right off the start. One is the intended purpose of this bike. So this, by Woom's own admittance, is a cross-country e-mountain bike. So they don't want to see you jump at anything off 30 centimeters or a foot, and they don't want to see you on downhill type terrain. It's more for undulating type terrain where you're going long and far, maybe a high mountain trail where kids under their own power won't be able to make it. Two, these bikes are very expensive. So the 24-inch version of the bike is $3,600 US. So that's getting up there as these really premium full suspension mountain bikes for kids. So I will leave it to you if you think there's value for you and your family, if you want to purchase something like this. I'm not 100% sure of the resale value of these. Is it going to be like the other Wooms, the traditional Wooms, where you can get 80% of the value, no problem, when you resell it? Perhaps. So now that we got the price out of the way, and we also have the intended use of these bikes out of the way, I'll run you through the bikes, then I'll take you through what I found in different scenarios and where these bikes shine. So the 24-inch version of the bike, which you see behind me, is intended for ages 7 to 11. So height-wise, think 50 to 57 inches. The minimum seat height on this bike is 28 inches. The 26-inch version of the bike is intended for ages 10 to 14. Height-wise, think 55 inches to 65 inches. The minimum seat height on the 26-inch bike is 31 inches. So geometry-wise, the Woom Ups, they have a little bit longer of a wheelbase than the traditional Woom Offs and the Woom Off Airs. Now, the 24-inch version of the bike is actually a little slacker. It's a 66-degree head tube angle, while the 26-inch version of the bike is a 68-degree head tube angle. The tires on the bike are Rocket Rons. Now these aren't the ultra light skin version that you see on some other kids' bikes. They have a little bit thicker of a sidewall, so they hold up a little bit better. They're not gonna pinch flat as easily. Although we've already flatted a couple times on each bike as the bikes are heavier. If the kids go up the curbs and they don't lift up the back, pop. Some other quick notes about the build. You get these Pro Max hydraulic disc brakes, 160 millimeter rotors in the front, 140 millimeter rotors in the back. You get a SRAM NX drivetrain, so it's 11-speed, 11 to 42 tooth with a clutch. That's an upgrade to what we see on the Woom Off or the Woom Off Air. The 24 gets 130 millimeter cranks, while the 26 gets 150 millimeter cranks. Perfect crank length. So let's spend some time talking about the Fazua drive system and battery pack and motor. This is a premium motor battery combination. You'll see this Fazua system on some of the new, really expensive premium adult e-bikes, like the new Trek cross-country e-bike that basically weighs nothing. So it's a 250 watt-hour battery combined with a 250 watt motor. That motor will give you 55 Newton meters of torque. That is pretty good. If you max that out, 55 Newton meters of torque on a kid's platform is plenty. Woom has a governing feature on the bike where it limits the speed to 12 miles per hour. This is a Class 1 e-bike, so it's classified Class 1, where in the US, the limit actually is 20 miles an hour. Now for the kids, the thought is, just for safety I suspect, is not to give them the full 20 miles an hour. Although 12, it is, I personally would have liked to see maybe 15 miles an hour. It just would have been nice because I also have an e-bike, and I found them, if we were riding on roads and things like that, I would want them just to catch up a tiny bit with my pace. So the Fazua system is super slick. It has an integrated touchpad display where you can adjust the support level. So there's 3 presets that are there for delivery of power. So how quick power is delivered and how much power is delivered. You can play around with this. They have a really good piece of software. So it's not controlled by the app. You actually have to download the software onto a laptop or a PC, and you need to take the drive/battery pack out of the bike and plug it into a USB wire into your computer. Here, you can start playing with these presets, and you can do whatever you want. There's a lot of range you can do, But to be honest, what I ended up doing was just basically maximizing the amount of power in one of the presets, as well as how fast that power was delivered. That made it feel almost like my Specialized e-bike. And that Specialized Rose motor is one of the best, if not the best, power delivery systems. And this almost felt like that. So a premium system. Another cool thing about the Fazua system is you can actually remove the battery and drive pack and replace it with a cover. And because there's basically no drag whatsoever at the motor, you can use this as a pedal bike. So the drive and battery pack weigh about 7 pounds, just over 7 pounds. So you basically drop 7 pounds off the bike. Both bikes all of a sudden become, sub 30 pedal bikes. So a couple of little gripes. I really can't stand the grips. They're the grips they use on the off and the off air, and they move around right from day one. They're useless as far as I'm concerned for mountain biking. I'd switch them out right away. Another would be the steer tube tapering. So it's 1 1/8 inch that tapers down to 1 inch. So it really restricts you to this fork. And this fork is great. It does the job for the intended use, this XC style terrain, but you couldn't put on something a little stiffer or beefier if you had that in mind. Another thing I'd like to see on the Woom Up is better brakes, to be honest. I want to see a metallic brake pad, maybe something like a Shimano Dior, where maybe bigger rotors as well, just because these bikes are a bit heavier and they do warrant a little bit better of a brake. And just like the regular Woom mountain bikes, the head tube is really long on these bikes, and I prefer to see a shorter head tube and have the ability to run spacers if you want to get the bar height up. But really, I want to get it lower, to be honest, in some circumstances. So that's something that could be improved. I also want to see Presta tubes on this bike and the ability for me to put in tubeless valves. I know they make Schrader tubeless valves. It's just more of a pain to find them. They're sometimes more expensive. And just like the regular bikes, I really am not a big fan of the seat post, the way it mounts to the rails of the seat. It increases the seat height unnecessarily. I know it's a very lightweight assembly, but I'd like something lower so I can get a lower minimum seat height. And finally, it's the lack of dropper post routing on this bike that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I mean, this is a very high priced bike. I think I'd probably want to put a dropper in there if I was riding this XC undulating type of terrain. It fits the platform of the bike really well, so it's something I think that really could improve the bike. So keeping in mind the intended use of the bike and the intended audience of this bike, Woom does provide a lot of customer service when you're purchasing an e-bike over the internet. Okay, so you actually get a welcome call where they take you through the bike and they explain everything about it, from the software to the motor to the componentry, and it's an excellent program for people who aren't as savvy into bikes, and specifically e-bikes. Where this bike really does shine is going on massive missions, and that's where we enjoyed it the most. We could even go right from our garage instead of driving to the local trail system. So we go right from the garage, whip up through all the neighborhood trails, climb some roads, and get into the trail system and buzz around the trail system for a while. And when we were in that trail system, we were looking for steep hills to climb up. And that was a blast. We really did have a blast. We went further. We went on exploratory missions to find abandoned houses and things like this. Stuff we wouldn't normally do on pedal bikes. I wouldn't take the kids on those adventures because I knew they were too far. I'd be pushing them the limits too much, and I'd have a bunch of whining and crying possibly. Where we also found a lot of use for this bike was the kids would join me on errands. So I take my e-bike a lot of places. I have a cargo e-bike and I have a commuter e-bike that I rip around and collect pizza when we order it or go do a grocery run on it, things like this. My little guy would come and join me on these trips because he had no problems keeping up. It wasn't an issue and I wasn't constantly having to wait for him. It really was great in those circumstances. We never ran out of battery power, and our adventures sometimes took us on probably an hour and a half, 2 hour adventures, and we rode full boost the whole time. So full power delivery the whole time. That's the way I ride my e-bike, and that's the way my kids like to ride it too. You could really, massage it over time. There's 3 presets. You can use varying degrees of power assist, so you could make it last longer if you were going on real long excursions for sure. There's really nothing quite like this quality of a system, the Fazua system, in a kid's e-bike. There's some other mid-drives out there. Commensal's got an in-stream bike, although, you know, it's got a kind of lesser Shimano motor, and it's a bit heavier, 40 plus pounds. And there's some other interesting bikes that have rear hubs driven motors, but not a big fan. You want mid-drives for e-bikes. So this is a very unique offering, and it's kind of like a proof of concept to me that we're gonna see full suspension kids mountain bikes in the 35-pound range and 24 and 26-inch bikes fairly soon, or at least we should. And for a guy like me, that's really interesting. That opens up all kinds of possibilities, being able to ride enduro-style mountain biking with your kids, with kid-specific full suspension e-bikes. So kudos to Woom for developing this and proving that you can get this system on a platform, and it is super, super kid-friendly. And, you know, who knows what's gonna come next? If you ride XC type terrain, undulating terrain, or you wanna do massive missions with your kids up in high alpine type territory, by all means, if you have the financial ability to purchase a bike like this, I wouldn't hesitate. This would be amazing. You'd have a great time with your kids on bikes. For more information on the Woom Up and all kids' bikes and family bike gear, visit www.thebikedads.com, and we'll see you on the trails.